On a frosty morning in northern Italy, January 27, 1945, the sky echoed with the thunderous roar of 18-cylinder engines. This was not just another routine mission in the closing months of World War II. It was about to become one of the most extraordinary tales of survival and piloting skill in aviation history. Lieutenant Raimundo da Costa Canario, a 20-year-old Brazilian fighter pilot, born on May 2, 1926, was preparing for what should have been a standard ground attack mission. Yet by day's end, his name would be etched forever in the annals of wartime aviation as the pilot who nursed his crippled plane home against impossible odds. The mission briefing that morning was deadly serious. German heavy Tiger tanks had rolled into northern Italy, their thick armor and powerful guns posing a devastating threat to Allied ground forces. The 1st Brazilian Fighter Squadron, part of the all-volunteer group of 48 Brazilian fighter pilots operating with the United States Army Air Force's 350th Fighter Group, had been tasked with eliminating these armored behemoths. Raimundo would be flying alongside the Allied Mediterranean Air Force, which included British Spitfires providing air cover, while the Brazilian P-47 pilots focused their attention on destroying ground targets. The aircraft that Raimundo would pilot that morning was no ordinary fighter plane. His P-47 Thunderbolt, a D-25A6 variant with tail number 19663, represented the pinnacle of American ground attack engineering. This machine, nicknamed the Flying Tank and also known as the Juggernaut of World War II, was built around one simple philosophy: survivability and devastating firepower. The P-47 was 50% heavier than the celebrated P-51 Mustang and twice the weight of the Spitfires that would accompany the mission. Its massive frame housed the legendary Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine, an 18-cylinder monster delivering over 2,500 horsepower. What made this aircraft truly fearsome was its weaponry. 850 caliber, 2 Browning heavy machine guns were mounted in the wings, carrying enough ammunition, 3,400 rounds in total, to cut a German locomotive clean in half. Beyond these guns, the P-47 could carry 3,000 pounds of bombs and rockets, delivering half the payload of a B-17 Flying Fortress bomber. This combination of devastating firepower and robust construction made the Thunderbolt the most effective ground attack aircraft in the Allied arsenal. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Raimundo's massive radial engine coughed to life with a bone-shaking rumble that could be felt a mile away. The sound was unmistakable. 2,500 horses of raw American power wrapped in over 10,000 pounds of armored aircraft. He taxied to the runway alongside 12 other aircraft, forming up for the dangerous journey into enemy-held territory. The weight of his aircraft was immense. Fully loaded, the P-47 could tip the scales at 17,500 pounds, or nearly 8,000 kilograms. Yet despite this massive bulk, the Thunderbolt could reach speeds of 426 miles per hour, or 686 kilometers per hour, at 30,000 feet, or 9,100 meters altitude. The formation climbed into the gray Italian sky, their destination the battlefields of northern Italy, where German armor was wreaking havoc on Allied positions. The visibility that morning was treacherous, forcing pilots to adopt increasingly dangerous attack methods to locate and engage their targets. The Spitfires would patrol the airspace above, watching for German fighters, while the P-47 pilots descended into the deadly world of ground attack, where every chimney stack, every church tower, and every hillside could hide anti-aircraft guns, waiting to tear them apart. As the formation approached the target area, the true nature of their mission became apparent. The German Tiger tanks below were some of the most feared weapons in the Wehrmacht arsenal. Each Tiger tank weighed over 57 tons, or 51,700 kilograms, and mounted an 88mm gun capable of destroying any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 2 miles or 3 kilometers. Their frontal armor was 7 inches or 178 millimeters thick, virtually impenetrable to most Allied anti-tank weapons. Raimundo began his first attack run, diving his P-47 toward the Earth at tremendous speed. The Thunderbolt's massive engine screamed as he pushed the aircraft beyond 450 miles per hour, or 724 kilometers per hour. The wind howling past his canopy as anti-aircraft fire erupted from German positions below. His first target came into view through his gun sight, a massive Tiger tank, its long gun barrel traversing to engage Allied ground forces. Raimundo pressed his gun trigger, and 850 caliber machine guns erupted in a devastating chorus of destruction. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the German crew. Over 3,000 rounds of ammunition poured from the P-47's wings at a rate of 13,000 rounds per minute combined. Each 50 caliber bullet carried enough kinetic energy to penetrate the Tiger's thinner top and rear armor plates. The tank erupted in smoke and flame as ammunition inside cooked off in a series of secondary explosions. Raimundo pulled up hard, his aircraft groaning under the tremendous G-forces as he climbed away from the target area. But one destroyed tank was not enough. German positions below continued to rain deadly fire upward, their anti-aircraft guns tracking the Brazilian pilot as he maneuvered for a second attack. Raimundo rolled his P-47 into another steep dive, this time targeting a second Tiger tank that was attempting to withdraw from the area. Again, his 8 machine guns spoke with deadly authority, and again, a 67-ton German war machine was reduced to burning scrap metal. The Brazilian pilot's blood was up now. Despite the increasing intensity of anti-aircraft fire, he spotted a third Tiger tank trying to find cover behind a stone building. This would be his most dangerous run yet, requiring him to dive even steeper and faster to line up the shot properly. Raimundo pushed his throttle forward, and the massive Pratt & Whitney engine responded with a surge of power that pressed him back into his seat. His airspeed indicator climbed past 460 miles per hour, or 740 kilometers per hour, as he dove toward his third victim. The anti-aircraft fire was now so intense that shell bursts filled the air around his aircraft like deadly black flowers blooming in the sky. German gunners had zeroed in on his flight path, and their calculations were becoming increasingly accurate with each passing second. Yet Raimundo pressed on, his gun sight fixed on the Tiger tank below. At 465 miles per hour, or 748 kilometers per hour, traveling faster than most modern highway speeds, Raimundo lined up his final shot. His 8 machine guns roared once more, and the third Tiger tank joined its companions in fiery destruction. But victory came at a terrible price. As Raimundo pulled up from his attack run, the inevitable happened. His aircraft clipped the top of a factory chimney with his right wing. The collision occurred in a split second, but its effects were catastrophic. The impact severed 128 centimeters, or over 4 feet of Raimundo's right wing, in what witnesses later described as a clean cut. The chunk of wing, containing fuel tanks, control surfaces, and structural elements crucial for flight, tumbled earthward, while the P-47, now critically unbalanced, bucked and rolled like an angry bronco. Most pilots would have immediately attempted to bail out of such a severely damaged aircraft. The P-47 was now flying with only a partial wing, its center of gravity drastically altered, and its control surfaces compromised. Yet somehow, incredibly, the flying tank continued to fly. The massive radial engine continued to produce power, and the aircraft's legendary structural strength was being tested to its absolute limits. But Raimundo's problems were far from over. The collision had not only destroyed a significant portion of his wing, but had also knocked out his radio equipment. He was now flying a crippled aircraft with no way to communicate with his fellow pilots or ground control. From the outside, his P-47 looked like no aircraft that Allied pilots had ever seen before. The missing wing section and unusual flight characteristics made identification nearly impossible from a distance. This identification problem would nearly prove fatal. As Raimundo struggled to maintain control of his damaged aircraft, a flight of Allied Spitfires spotted what appeared to be an unknown aircraft behaving erratically in their airspace. In the confusion and stress of combat, the Spitfire pilots initially mistook the heavily damaged P-47 for a German aircraft. Without warning, they opened fire on Raimundo's already crippled plane. The Spitfire's 20mm cannon shells and .33 caliber machine gun bullets tore into the P-47's fuselage and tail section, adding fresh damage to an aircraft that was already flying on borrowed time. For several terrifying moments, Raimundo found himself fighting not only to keep his aircraft in the air, but also to avoid being shot down by his own allies. Only when the Spitfire pilots came close enough to see the distinctive shape and markings of the American-built fighter did they realize their terrible mistake. The British pilots, horrified by their error, flew alongside Raimundo's aircraft and offered apologetic salutes. But gestures of regret could not repair the additional damage their guns had inflicted. The P-47 now carried battle damage from both the chimney collision and friendly fire. Yet, it continued to fly through sheer determination and engineering excellence. Raimundo now faced the ultimate test of his piloting skills. He had to fly an aircraft missing over 4 feet or 128 centimeters of its right wing back to base, a distance of dozens of miles over enemy territory. The P-47's flight characteristics had been completely altered by the wing loss. The aircraft wanted to roll continuously to the right due to the uneven lift distribution, requiring constant left rudder and aileron input to maintain level flight. The missing wing section had also reduced the aircraft's total lift capacity, meaning Raimundo had to maintain higher airspeeds to stay airborne. Yet flying too fast risked structural failure of the already damaged airframe. It was a delicate balancing act that required every ounce of his flying experience and intuitive understanding of aircraft behavior. The slightest mistake would send him spinning toward the earth with no possibility of recovery. Mile after mile, Raimundo nursed his crippled P-47 through the Italian sky. The massive Pratt & Whitney engine, that 18-cylinder marvel of American engineering, continued to produce the power he needed to stay aloft. Oil pressure remained steady. Coolant temperatures stayed within acceptable limits, and the propeller continued to bite into the thin air with mechanical precision. The aircraft that had been designed to absorb tremendous punishment was proving its designers correct in the most extreme circumstances imaginable. As Raimundo approached his home airfield, he faced yet another challenge: landing a severely damaged aircraft that had never been designed to fly in such a configuration. The missing wing section would create unpredictable aerodynamic forces during the approach, and the additional battle damage from the Spitfire attack had further compromised the aircraft's systems. A normal landing approach would be impossible. He would have to improvise techniques that no flight manual had ever described. Ground crews at the airfield watched in amazement as the distinctive silhouette of a P-47 appeared on the horizon. But something was clearly wrong with its shape. As the aircraft drew closer, the full extent of the damage became apparent. Mechanics and pilots gathered along the runway, many of them convinced they were about to witness a fatal crash. The idea that any aircraft could remain controllable with such massive structural damage defied everything they knew about aerodynamics and flight physics. Raimundo lined up for his approach, fighting the aircraft's tendency to drop the damaged right wing. His airspeed had to be higher than normal to compensate for the reduced wing area, but not so high that he would overshoot the runway or lose control during the landing flare. The P-47 touched down hard, bounced twice, and finally settled onto the runway with a jarring impact that sent shock waves through the airframe. As the aircraft rolled to a stop, ground crews raced toward it with fire extinguishers and medical equipment, expecting to find a badly injured pilot inside a wreck that should never have been able to fly. Instead, they found Raimundo climbing out of his cockpit under his own power, tired and shaken, but remarkably uninjured. The P-47, despite its catastrophic damage, had brought him home alive. The immediate reaction of most maintenance personnel was that the aircraft should be scrapped immediately and used for spare parts. The damage was so extensive that conventional wisdom suggested repair would be impossible or prohibitively expensive. Yet Raimundo insisted that his P-47 be repaired and returned to service. This was not mere sentimentality. It was a testament to his faith in the aircraft that had saved his life and his understanding that every flyable fighter was precious in the ongoing war effort. Remarkably, the maintenance crews were able to repair the heavily damaged F-47. New wing sections were fabricated and installed, damaged control surfaces were replaced, and the radio equipment was rebuilt. Within weeks, the aircraft that had survived one of the most incredible flying feats in aviation history was back in combat service, ready to take the fight to the enemy once more. Raimundo's extraordinary mission was just one highlight in a distinguished military career that would span the remainder of World War II. He would go on to complete 50 combat missions, each one carrying the same deadly risks and requiring the same steady nerves that had served him so well on January 27, 1945. His exceptional skill and courage earned him the Distinguished Flying Cross, one of America's highest military honors for heroism in aerial combat. The 1st Brazilian Fighter Squadron, of which Raimundo was a proud member, compiled an impressive combat record during their service in Italy. These 48 volunteer pilots, flying P-47 Thunderbolts under United States command, destroyed over 1,300 motor vehicles, 250 railway cars, and 25 bridges during their combat tour. They flew 445 missions, 2,550 individual sorties, and logged 5,465 hours of combat flight time. The P-47 Thunderbolt that saved Raimundo's life represented the pinnacle of World War II ground attack aircraft design. Republic Aviation, under the guidance of designer Alexander Kartveli, had created an aircraft that perfectly balanced firepower, durability, and performance. More than 15,600 Thunderbolts were manufactured between 1941 and 1945, serving in every theater of the war. The aircraft's combat record was extraordinary by any measure. P-47 pilots claimed nearly 4,000 enemy aircraft destroyed in air-to-air combat, but their ground attack achievements were even more impressive. Thunderbolt squadrons destroyed 9,000 trains, 86,000 trucks, and 6,000 armored vehicles during the war. These statistics represented not just mechanical destruction, but the systematic dismantling of the German war machine's ability to move supplies, reinforcements, and equipment to the front lines. After the war ended in May 1945, Raimundo transitioned to civilian life, but remained connected to aviation. He became a civilian pilot, applying the skills and experience gained during his military service to peaceful purposes. For over 50 years, he carried the memories of that extraordinary January morning when he nursed his crippled P-47 through the Italian sky against impossible odds. When Raimundo passed away in 1997, he left behind a legacy that extended far beyond his personal survival story. His experience represented thousands of similar acts of courage and skill by Allied airmen who faced death daily to help win World War II. Each mission carried the same risks, required the same steady nerves, and demanded the same split-second decision-making that had saved his life on that winter morning over northern Italy. The legacy of the P-47 Thunderbolt lived on long after the last combat mission of World War II. When the United States Air Force began developing a new close air support aircraft in the 1970s, they deliberately chose to honor the P-47's legacy. The Fairchild Republic, A-10 Thunderbolt. 2, commonly known as the Warthog, was specifically named to commemorate the World War II fighter's ground attack mission. Like its namesake, the A-10 was designed around the philosophy of survivability and devastating ground attack capability. The modern aircraft incorporated many of the same design principles that had saved Raimundo's life: redundant systems, armored protection for the pilot, and the ability to continue flying with significant battle damage. The A-10's 30mm GAU-8 Avenger cannon was a direct descendant of the P-47's 850 caliber machine guns, designed to destroy enemy armor with precision and overwhelming firepower. The story of Lieutenant Raimundo da Costa Canario and his miraculous survival represents more than just one man's extraordinary piloting skill. It embodies the broader story of World War II aviation, where young men from around the world climbed into machines that pushed the boundaries of technology and human endurance. These pilots faced odds that seem impossible by today's standards, flying aircraft that were barely tested, over enemy territory bristling with anti-aircraft guns, against opponents who were equally skilled and equally determined. The P-47 Thunderbolt that carried Raimundo home that day was more than just an assembly of aluminum, steel, and engine components. It represented the combined efforts of thousands of American workers who had labored in factories across the United States to build the tools of victory. From the Pratt & Whitney engineers who designed the massive R2800 engine to the Republic aviation workers who riveted the fuselage panels, each person had contributed to the aircraft that would save a young Brazilian pilot's life over the skies of Italy. The collision that severed over 4 feet, or 128 centimeters of Raimundo's right wing, occurred at a speed that defied human reaction time. At 465 miles per hour, or 748 kilometers per hour, his aircraft was covering over 680 feet, or 207 meters every second. The impact with the chimney lasted only milliseconds, but its effects transformed a routine ground attack mission into one of aviation history's most remarkable survival stories. The physics of flight made Raimundo's survival almost impossible to explain. Aircraft wings generate lift through the differential air pressure created by their shape and angle of attack. When a significant portion of one wing is suddenly removed, the remaining wing continues to generate its normal amount of lift, while the damaged wing produces far less. This creates a massive rolling moment that should have immediately sent the aircraft spinning out of control and into the ground. That the P-47 continued to fly with such extensive damage testified to both the aircraft's inherent stability and the pilot's extraordinary skill. Raimundo had to instantly compensate for the changed flight characteristics, applying opposite control inputs to prevent the aircraft from rolling into an unrecoverable spin. Every moment in the air required constant attention and adjustment as the damaged aircraft fought to follow unfamiliar and dangerous flight paths. Today, when we see an A-10 Warthog providing close air support to troops in combat, we are witnessing the direct descendant of the aircraft that saved Raimundo's life over northern Italy 8 decades ago. The thunder of its engines, the devastating accuracy of its cannon, and its ability to absorb punishment while protecting its pilot, all echo the characteristics that made the P-47 Thunderbolt one of the most successful combat aircraft ever built. The factory chimney that nearly killed a young Brazilian pilot in 1945 has long since crumbled to dust. But the story of what happened when aircraft met obstacle at 465 miles per hour continues to inspire aviators around the world. It stands as proof that human skill, mechanical excellence, and sheer determination can overcome odds that seem impossible, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys really do make it home.